All right, guys, welcome back. And as many of you are probably well aware, this is the Alfarrari. So this is my 1973 Alfa Romeo GTV 2000 that I have converted to now run a Ferrari 360 V8. If you missed the last episode, I'll put a link up above so you can check it out. And like always, do the things like subscribe, comment. It all helps out with that mysterious algorithm. I know it's been a while and many of you have been wondering what's happening, but basically the issues we had with the Alfarrari in the past was steering. So originally this car ran with a steering box. Because of the way the engine was, I had to swap to a steering rack. This was the rack that I originally had in the car, which I originally thought was from a Corolla. It was actually a Suzuki Ignis. This didn't do the job. The issue that I had when I first actually finally got to drive the car was that the steering was dangerously slow. So in a chicane where I should be going like this, I was going and chasing the wheel, and that was just never going to work. So after a lot of research, I went with a Toyota AE86 quick rack out of America, and that took a while to come. Then I had to play around and order factory AE86 tie rod ends, and that was where we left you. And it was in the car. I found that the steering was correct from my initial just testing. That did sort out my steering issues. One of the things that didn't quite line up as good as it should have was this, which is the steering knuckle or steering yoke. The one I had, I don't actually know where I got it from, but this lined up well with the Ignis rack. It slotted on whichever way up it goes nicely and worked well. And when I put it on the other rack, it was very close. I thought it was fine. I thought it just needed to be done up a bit tighter. But on testing, thankfully on the hoist, I was testing the lock of the steering, and even with that yoke done up tight, I got to full lock, and when I knocked on full lock, it actually slipped, and the whole wheel was then free spinning, and there was no connection between the rack and the yoke that I had. So I had to search down another yoke. I managed to find a factory yoke for a A86, ordered it. They were quite cheap. And of course, A86s came out with power steering and non-power steering. Power steering yoke is different size to the non-power steering yoke, and the power steering yoke has quite a large, takes a large spline on the rack end, and the non-power steering has a small one. So after a lot more searching, I managed to find one which was quite expensive out of Japan. That came, it fits, it's all working nicely. So we were on to most of the bits. Now, the other bit that I was working on was the original steering arms I modified to fit the car better. So this is the original steering arm that I modified to test fit into the car. Now, the original steering arms, instead of dropping down like this, they sort of came out straight. I had to lower it for bump steer. Now, lots of people saying, why don't I just keep the factory arms or get there's a slightly shorter arms. These are slightly shorter, which did help my steering ratio. But another big thing is that I had to use these bump steer spacers, which are not really good. There's a lot of extra leverage on this point, and yeah, overall I wasn't very happy with them. The other issue is that a factory tie rod end, if I can find one of them, here we go, that's a factory tie rod end from a Yaris, but they have a taper, and the issue is that this taper was, in the steering arms, was designed to go in from the top. It wasn't designed to go in from the bottom. So when I modified these arms, I flipped this end over so that the taper would go underneath, because that corrects my bump steer and all of the geometries I've talked about in the past. So I modified these to get them to work. I tested the bump steer and everything with these, but this is not legal to run on the road in Australia. The issue with this is you're not allowed to cut or weld or even bend factory steering components in Australia. It's not legal, it's not safe, I get it. So I had to come up with some sort of alternative. So there was something like this. I wasn't very happy with this option, and like I said, there were lots of issues with that. So I actually spent some time, and after making these up, I drew them up in CAD.
And I was contacted by a company, JCB 3DP, and I really like the concept of this place. Basically, they do 3D printing and CNC machining to order to anyone.
So I gave them the files, and in those files there are a whole lot of options of different materials that they can make them out of. They can 3D print them in plastic. They can also 3D print in stainless steel, which was one of the options, but again, I don't like the thought of a 3D printed stainless steel steering arm. It still would, I suppose, technically be classed as welded, and yeah, that was not right. So I wanted something billet. Straight, like 6061 aluminium is not really strong enough, but after going backwards and forwards a few times, what they actually came up with is this, which is 7075 aluminium. So it's actually stronger than steel. Like all of the tensile strengths and everything are all on their site. And this is the arm that I designed up in CAD, and it was as simple as uploading the design, picking my material, and they'll send me out a quote. And once I got the quote, they make the part and send the part. And the quote was extremely reasonable. I was extremely surprised at the cost of these. I think the retail cost for these two arms made to my specs, and they've got the taper, everything is made and machined to an extremely high level, exactly to my specs. The retail cost was $360 US, which I think is extremely good value for some custom parts. And it's quite a simple service to use. I will definitely be using it again. I'll put a link in the description, and yeah, I'm quite happy having this as an option now, that you can just design something in CAD and send it away, and they will send back CNC machine parts, 3D printed, all that sort of stuff. Very happy with the results of these, and these are quite solid and chunky. This is thicker and much more solid than the original arm was. So as you can see here, much chunkier part. So I am very happy with these. Finally can start putting the car together and buttoning it all up. So I think as pretty as these are, I think they need a coat of black, so they're just to disappear underneath the car, and then we can start reassembly. All right, so I've got my tie rods all connected up and ready to just double check again my bump steer. So the tie rods are connected. I have a laser connected to the hub, and I have a line of tape, vertical tape on the garage in the background, just so it gives a bit of context. And what I'm going to do is I turn on the laser, and about here is ride height. And if I go all the way up and ride height, up to the bump stop and down, back down to ride height, and it moves left and right less than 5 millimeters over 2.8 meters. So I'm not sure what that is in an angle, but nothing. So bump steer is bang on. I'm very happy with that. All right, well, that has been an epic journey to get steering in. I've done an eyeball wheel alignment. That still needs to be tweaked, but we have our tie rods in, our steering arms in, the suspension all done, the new steering knuckle is up there in, the new steering rack, the whole lot is fitted, and we shouldn't have to worry about steering anymore. Woohoo! All right, so another thing I've been working on and off camera for seems like forever now is the factory gauge cluster. So basically, I wanted to try and keep the look of a factory car. I didn't want screens and stuff in there. I wanted to keep it sort of looking like it's sort of, this all came out this way. Obviously it didn't. I couldn't keep the original gauges because they were manually went round gauges by a cable rather than the electronic signals that I now have from the Ferrari engine and the speed signal and all that sort of stuff. So I had to swap them out, and I used some more modern gauges that I gutted, and then I got a mate, Andrew, to make up the faces for me. He just printed them out to my specs, and that matches the font and things of the original Alfa pretty closely, but obviously it says Alfarrari on it. They're not perfect, and then for the temp and the fuel, I actually went and got some Raceworks gauges and put them in. But the whole back is just a mess. None of it works properly. They don't match. These now, because of the way I've done them, still rely on the original backlighting from these gauges, which is just some globes in behind, and the light sort of comes around the edge of the gauge, whereas these are more modern backlit gauges. They just, nothing matches, nothing really works the way I wanted to. I wanted it to look neat and tidy and seamless, and this doesn't. And it's still not working properly, and I don't like the way everything is mounted in the back and this mess of junk. It just doesn't match in with what I'm going for in this car. So I'm at a loss. I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep pursuing something like this and see if I can get some more gauges, or whether I just suck it up and mount a screen behind, and I can actually digitally produce these gauges. At least if I have a screen that I can have so much more information coming in from the ECU with a CAN bus screen, like something like I've got in the Rockstar, that can have built-in warnings that can come up and just blank the screen and just go warning and let me know that there's something happening. It can tell me oil pressure and oil temp. It can tell me whether I'm running rich or lean. I can adjust it to show whatever I want and give me all the information I need, rather than sort of a few very rudimentary gauges. So not sure what I'm doing on this at the moment. I'm not sold on this as it is. And also last time I plugged it in, I did let some smoke out. I don't know if they work again yet, but yeah, not sure. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should I just put a screen in behind here somehow and make it so that these are like still showing? But I don't know. Let me know what you think. All right, so power on. Aha, so we got a speedo that works. The center gauge, as you can see here by what I mean by the backlighting, is completely different. So you can barely see anything from this one. These are bright and the tacho's dead. These gauges match these center gauges. So I'm potentially got replacements for these, but we'll just see what happens. I think the next thing I need to do is do the kick panel. So there's going to be a kick panel against this side of the car and another one to match over that side. So let's start making them up.
So I'm using some of the car builders' clear plastic to make my templates. It just makes things a lot easier to see what you're doing. Copying it onto the 2mm aluminium and then just trim it out to shape.
All right, that was very simple, just the basic template, and then I've got one kick panel all ready to go. Got a couple of holes in it so I can screw it in. I'm going to use this now to see if it fits on the driver's side and see what I need to modify.
So I ended up just using the template material for the other side, as the aluminium was not going to fit. And the reason I use aluminium is it's just a better material. It doesn't get affected by water like some of the wood products would, and it's relatively easy to work with, at least for me, so I much prefer it. And that's what I've made the whole interior out of. And now I'm starting to make templates for floor mats.
All right, so I have my patterns for my 2 lots of floor mats. So I've got a big one for the passenger side, a smaller one from the driver's side, because obviously it's got the space for the pedals. So let's take this now and start making up some floor mats and also covering those kick plates.
So to cover these kick panels, I just glue on some 6mm foam and then trim it to shape. Now a lot of people ask what glue I use. The glue I use is extremely expensive. It's from Tensor Grip and it's a T65. It's very expensive, but it works, so I use it. Now I'm just going to glue on the leather. Now, as I go to wrap, one of the ways to trim the corners, as you can see I'm doing here, is you can see I cut a little strip and pull it tight over the corners. That actually gives you a much nicer corner rather than just cutting sort of one angle at 90 degrees and just folding each side. It tends to round out the corners nicely. You can see here in a bit more detail how I'm actually adding those little strips in the corners to really give a nice tight radius.
All right, so my kick panels are done, all trimmed up. These are ready to go in the car. That's nice and simple, easy job. The next thing is my floor mat. So I've got my carpet down here on the floor. I'm going to start cutting out my floor mat templates, and I'll show you how I'm going to turn these into something to put in the car.
It is at times like these when a really good pair of scissors comes in handy. I ended up simplifying the driver's side floor mat just around the pedals, as it was going to be too difficult to sew together and it wouldn't look as neat as I would like.
All right, so I've cut out my basic floor mat shapes, and as you saw, I cut out 2 of each side. The reason for that is that I made floor mats in the past out of a single sheet of carpet, and it ends up curling up in the corners, and it just ends up being this really terrible floor mat. Whereas my plan is to double it up so that I've got a much stiffer, much better feeling, nice flat floor mat in the car, which is ultimately what I want. What I'm going to do now, though, is before I actually start sewing these together, I want to sew on some attachment points. Now, most modern cars have some sort of pins or clips or something that sort of holds the floor mat from sliding forward. And the best suggestion I have had for keeping floor mats in place is actually to just put Velcro on the bottom and have some Velcro tabs. Particularly in an old car where you don't have any mounts or anything. I'm just going to have strips of Velcro coming out from under the seat rail. So they just bolt in where the seat rails bolt in, and that's why I've extended these tabs on the front floor mat, and they will have little strips of Velcro on them so that when I put it in the car, they won't slide forward. So let's do that, and then we can start looking at sewing them together. All right, there we have the Velcro bits sewn on, and the reason why I sewed them onto one layer is because when I sew the top layer on, if I sewed them over the top, you can see where they've been sewn on. So it just sort of, it's a bit of an ugly spot, whereas now I can put the second layer over the top and you won't know that they're there. All right, so this is a much firmer, stiffer floor mat already. It's already feeling much better, but this leg is a little twisted. So I'm going to cut that open and fix it up. Hopefully I can cut it open, re-sew it, and get it sort of sitting nicely. All right, so I just have done a test pad. So this is the double thickness, and I started sewing on this test piece, which is simulating my heel pad for the floor mat. So for the driver's side, I'm going to have a heel pad, and I was just looking at the different methods of sewing it on. So these two edges are where I've sort of folded it over and doubled it over, but because of the thickness of the leather, it actually looks quite neat still without actually doubling it over. It makes it much simpler and much easier to sew it, and that still looks good. It doesn't have a nasty edge on it, so I think that's the method I'm going to use. It's much less likely to buckle and sort of turn horrible, because it's quite a possibility to make a horrible mess when you're trying to sew something onto something thick like this, because by the time you get all the way around, the edges don't meet up again, and it just ends up looking horrible. So I'm going to cut out a nice heel pad, and let's see if we can sew it on nice and neatly without making it a shambles.
So I cut out my heel pad and started sewing it on, and as I mentioned, yeah, it didn't go to plan, and I had to unpick it because it wasn't lining up at the other end. So I tried sewing it again, and I wasn't happy again. So I unpicked it again and sewed it again, and it still wasn't perfect.
All right, it's not the prettiest. It did buckle a little bit there, but the pad is in there. We have a nice heel pad now, and I cut it open and redid it about 3 times, so that is going to have to do. So let's just go and trial fit these in the car. Now that is a beautiful fitted floor mat. Driver's side's a perfect fit, then I lay my passenger side in, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? So the passenger side I sewed upside down. It fits perfectly upside down. That's exactly what I wanted, just the wrong way up. Back to the drawing board.
So back out and start making the floor mat once again, but this time the right way around. And once that was done, then I start cutting out strips of leather for the edge binding. Of course, with Sasha's help, the Golden Retriever. And she's still doing pretty good. She's 14 and a half years old and still, getting around pretty well. And here I start sewing the binding around the edge of the floor mat, face down.
All right, so you would have seen me cut a strip of leather all the way around, about 50 mil wide, and I've gone on and I've sewn it upside down all around the top face of the floor mat, or at least to where I've run out of leather for the time being. And the point of that is to make a really nice, neat edge binding. So by sewing that on right next to the edge, I can then fold it over, and then by tucking it over onto the back, you can sort of see there, it will flat roll over, and I can sew again down this seam in the gap, so you won't see the stitches, but it'll actually tie the leather onto the back, and then I get this really nice, neat leather edge binding all the way around the floor mat. So that's what I'm going to do now. Let's go around. I'm going to have to make some relief cuts in the corners, so I'll show you as I do them. Yeah, hopefully we have some nice finished floor mats. All right, so I messed up. I didn't think about it, and I actually cut a couple of relief cuts in this corner, so I've got a bit of an ugly corner from the front. It's not perfect, whereas these ones, there's a bit of creasing here where I'm sort of wrapping around the edges. Again, not terrible, but I cut one relief cut in that corner. But these tight corners, you can actually, it sort of folds over and wants to pull nice and tight anyway. And that looks quite nice and neat. So I'm just going to cut another piece of leather, add on, and just keep going around until I get to the other side. So let's do that. All right, and there's the floor mat with everything in there except I messed up, and with my heel pad that, like I mentioned, is not perfect anyway, I made it parallel to this side of the floor mat, not this one. And as such, it's skewed, so that's not ideal. Kick panel is in though, that's all looking good. And now we have a passenger side that actually fits. All right, so I am very happy with that. We have the floor mats. They don't have that final fitting, and I'm gonna have to do something about that foot pad because I'm just not happy with it. So that will have to be in another episode because we're out of time. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 2017, Ferrari released its new Portofino in the Italian Riviera village of Portofino. The Ferrari Portofino made its Asian debut in Hong Kong's Peninsula Hotel in 2018, revealing an Asian spec model with the menu in simplified Chinese, as Ferrari believed Asia to be its biggest market for this car. Based on the California tier it replaced, it is a two-door 2+2 hardtop convertible and has an all-new aluminium alloy chassis. The Portofino is powered by 3.9 litre V8 twin turbo, similar to that which is found in the GT-C4 Lusso. Although it has a lower compression and is detuned to make 600 horsepower, it is still able to go from 0 to 100k an hour in 3.5 seconds.
All right, the Alfa is getting closer, finally back on it. The steering is feeling much better. We have floor mats, they're not completely attached, but I've still got more to do. And as you can see, I am working on Harry in the background. There'll be another update on Harry coming soon as well. So I'm really trying to sort of get a bit going there. And people seem to like Barb, which is what we've named.
Yes, we have. We love Barb.
Yeah,
So.
Barb is the Merc. If you saw our new daily driver that's not a daily driver.
Yeah,
Yes, that's Barb.
it's Barb.
Affectionately named after Barb, who was the previous owner. And yeah.
It's an homage.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think about videos. He loves reading your comments. And I believe that is everything.
Yes, but join us on Patreon to
yes.
watch the videos a day before everybody else, ad-free.
And give support to Jeff and his
Yes,
car vision.
that's it. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye guys. So originally the menu was in Chinese, as Ferrari believed no. Hey guys, in 2017 Ferrari V8 twin turbo, similar to that which is found in the GT-C4 Lusso.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Although the engine is detuned to make 600 horsepower an hour, and no, what?
Not an hour.
Though the engine is detuned to make 600 horsepower and it has decompression.
Has lower compression.